Crisis on Earth S. You know it's serious when there's a letter in the title. We've been making our way through Crisis comics leading up to Crisis on Infinite Earths. The big crisis, the one that reset everything. This is 1985 through 1986. Although one rule, you must have Crisis in the title. Otherwise it would just be every JLA, JSA team up. And as fun as that would be, it would be a lot. We'll get to the others. We've been voting on some of them. Our last Crisis that we covered was Crisis on Earth X, the Nazi Earth. It was pretty serious. And in that one at the end, there was a fan letter complaining about the proliferation of all the Earths. And oh, how I wish that this had been the exact next JLA JSA team up. However, no, Crisis on Earth X was Justice League 107, and that was 1973, and we're hopping down to issue 135, and that's from the year 1976. So we're close, but no, there's a gap in between. Now, this Crisis event spans 3 issues. And each one has Crisis in the title, and it brings in the characters from the Fawcett universe. Well, more of them, because by this point we already had Captain Marvel. DC had licensed the characters from the Fawcett universe in 1972, chief among them being the aforementioned Captain Marvel. Though by the time they acquired him, Marvel had the trademark for the name, and so they couldn't call him that in the title, and that's when you start seeing Shazam! And in 1973, DC introduced Captain Marvel and the family to the DC universe, and said that they came from Earth S. The Crisis we're about to look at expands on the amount of characters in use, because they hadn't just licensed Billy and his family, but pretty much most of the Fawcett characters. In the 90s, DC would get full acquisition of the characters in the roster. Now, as for this Crisis, it's wild, and at times can feel truly random. It's jam-packed and a whole bunch of other things. It's also got a lot of characters, so they gotta try and keep it tight. The result is that the setting is about madcap, yet highly contained. It's kept on the rails by emulating the formula of past crises, but then the way that it breaks them down internally is fascinating. But that's enough build-up. I'm Sasha, this is Casually Comics, and let's get started. The first issue of this, as mentioned, was Justice League 135, and the story Crisis in Eternity, with a cover that shows you all the characters you're getting and the Earths they hail from. Take notes, there won't be a test, but you may need help remembering. The story is interestingly credited, so let's look at it. We have plot and continuity credit to E. Nelson Bridwell, who was a continuity fiend, a detail machine who worked tirelessly to try and bridge everything together, even Super Friends things. And there are a lot of characters here. Some readers, especially newer ones, may have been unfamiliar with them. The words, as they credited, are by Martin Pasco. Dick Dillon is penciling and Frank McLaughlin is on inks. Presenting the 14th annual team-up. That's noteworthy because by this point you'd had a generation of fans who had grown up with these team-ups. They'd be events. There would be expectations around them, and also by this point it had become kind of a thing that they would introduce new characters from different universes in them. They'd become part of the fabric of the Justice League books. Now for this one, we start on Earth S, with our main villain, who is King Kull. Nothing to do with the Robert E. Howard verse. King Kull, who also went by Beastman, was created by Otto Binder and C.C. Beck as a Captain Marvel / Marvel family villain. He debuted in Captain Marvel Adventures 125 in 1951. He was the ruler of the Submen, who at one point ruled over humanity because they had superior tech, but no more because Homo sapiens had superior numbers and were able to overthrow them. And Kull's not over it. He's bitter, and that's also the root of his revenge plan here. Revenge, it's a dish best served across multiple universes. The craft's atoms shift and coalesce, and the vessel materializes in a nameless void, the exact center of time and space, where stands the legendary Rock of Eternity. For eons have I planned this moment. No matter, I, from whom all has been stolen, have but one thing left in abundance. Time. Kull has an aptly named torpor beam, which freezes the gods inside the rock, except for Mercury, who's able to slip away for help. He's so swift. This gives Kull time to tell his backstory to the audience, and also hint as to what he's planning. The recap would be good because many people may not have been familiar with him, or they may have needed the refresher. But on top of that, it's always good to have the motivation of the villain, why they're doing what they're doing. But soon I shall commit against humankind the self-same genocide committed against my people, and the puny human race will be no more. From here, I can destroy the humans on every world. Shazam, who is the wizard who gave Billy his powers, can still communicate telepathically, and so he's done that with Mercury and told him who he needs to go get and how he can maybe stop Kull's plan. Kull does not know this at the moment, seemingly. Now this leads us to Earth 1, where Green Arrow and Black Canary are fighting. Not each other, they're fighting crime. And Mercury only grabs Green Arrow. Black Canary has a canary cry. Perhaps it's so that all the people they bring from Earth 1 are originally from Earth 1, because at this point in history, Black Canary is from Earth 2, and she had moved on over after the death of her husband. We are pre the retcon that's going to separate Black Canary into 2 separate characters, a mother and a daughter. So after grabbing Green Arrow, Mercury has his Earth 1 squad. He assembled the rest off panel. Roll call! Green Arrow, Earth 1 Superman, The Flash, Barry Allen, Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, and Earth 1 Hawkman and Hawkgirl. Then we hop over to Earth 2, the Golden Age Earth, and we're in luck because Earth 2 Batman is not in retirement this issue. Later on Earth 2, That's right, Earth 2, a parallel world similar to our own, occupying the same time stream and physical space as Earth 1, but existing at a different vibratory speed. Similar, but with subtle differences, as a look at that world's Batman and Robin will attest. Glad you decided to check the retirement number long enough to make the award ceremony tonight, Batman. It's my first public honor since working as a single. That must be kind of nice for the sidekicks to be acknowledged like you're your own character now. Listen, Robin, if you can find the time with a UN delegate's job to hold down, plus working with that newly formed super squad, the least I can do is come out of mothballs for one night. What do you mean you're confused? You haven't been reading the new All-Star? Shame on you. I like that dialogue box took the time to brag/exposit about Robin's job. At this point, they had relaunched All-Star Comics as a next generation of the JSA type deal on Earth 2, and they'd taken over the numbering from when the original comic ended in 1951. So it just launched at that same number, like it hadn't had a gap, which was a classic practice of books taking over the numbering from other issues, other books, that kind of thing. Now, this Batmobile is bigger than I thought, because Mercury is able to get The Flash, Jay Garrick, Earth 2 Wonder Woman, Green Lantern Alan Scott, and Johnny Thunder back there. Also, enjoy this panel of Mercury riding on the front like a hood ornament. Now, Kull is starting kind of in the mid-range of destruction. He's not going to just take out one Earth, but he's also not going to take them all out at the same time. He's going to start with Earth 1, 2, and S. Sorry, Earth 3, you're not included. Also, Earth X has its own problems. On Earth S, it's time for Mercury to get that crew. He gets Ibis, the Invincible, who was once Emintep. Ibis is powerful. It won't even matter that they couldn't get Dr. Fate. That's how powerful he is. He debuted in Wiz Comics number 2 in 1940. He was created by Bob Kinget. He was an Egyptian prince and acolyte of Thoth. Hey, Thoth mentioned! That's also where he's getting the name from, because Thoth is depicted with the head of an ibis. Amenhotep wields the ibis stick, which can basically do anything. He was usurped by a magician, the Black Pharaoh, and his lover is poisoned, saving him. And so he put her in suspended animation to heal, and then put a spell on himself so that he could be there when she revived. He ends up a mummy and comes back in the year 1940, and after he goes and finds his wife, they settle down and he fights crime, as you do. Mercury also grabs Spy Smasher, Alan Armstrong, who also debuted in Wiz Comics number 2, created by Bill Parker and CC Beck. He's a wealthy sportsman of the non-powered hero variety, but he's also very specifically espionage focused, and so he has a lot of wartime adventures, that kind of thing. Spy Smasher was up there in popularity alongside Captain Marvel for Fawcett. He smashed a lot of spies. However, after the war, his popularity started to decline, and they tried to rebrand him as Crime Smasher, but it didn't fully take. His nemesis was called The Mask. I just wanted you to know that. Mercury also grabs Bullet Man and Bullet Girl, who we've talked about. Scientist Jim Barr, who created a super serum before Captain America to cure crime. And he ended up just turning himself into an Uberman instead, and then decided that that formula was too dangerous to fall into criminal hands, and so kept it a secret, and fought crime because he had made a promise to his father, who was a cop who had been murdered, and he had daddy issues / he wanted to avenge him and honor his legacy. It's more honoring the legacy than anything. He also constructs a special helmet, a bullet-shaped graviton helmet that lets him fly. He is later joined by his love interest, who ends up also taking the formula and getting a special helmet, and then they fight crime together. This issue, the Justice League one, also says that they're married, so they got married off panel, because that did not happen in the Golden Age. They both debuted in Nickel Comics number 1 in 1940. And finally, rounding out the Earth S crew, we have another dynamic duo. We have Mr. Scarlet and Pinky, the Whiz Kid. Mr. Scarlet is Brian Butler, and Pinky, aka Pinkerton Butler, is his adopted son. Brian was a lawyer who uses gadgets to stop crime. He's one of those. Interestingly, he reveals his identity to his love interest right away and says that that's what you do when you trust people. It stands out. Also, the city is identified as Gotham in one panel. His creators are Jack Kirby and Ed Herron. Pinky's are looser, and they're thought to be Otto and Jack Bender. Mr. Scarlet debuted in WoW Comics number 1, the winter issue of 1940, and Pinky joins him in issue 4. Name aside, Pinky is actually a very endearing sidekick, and one of those ones who joins his mentor by choice. He had already made a costume that emulated Mr. Scarlet before actually meeting him because he was such a big fan. Their adventures are actually pretty fun. Although I can't say Pinky without thinking about Pinky in the Brain, and just the theme starts running in my mind. So that's the Earth S group, and Green Arrow has no chill about seeing heroes he doesn't recognize. Okay, now all I need to know is, who are the guys in the freaky long johns? Look who's talking, the weirdo in the Robin Hood suit. Easy, son. If the bowslinger wants introductions, he'll have them. How can Green Arrow judge anybody's costumes based on who he hangs out with? Also, there's a nice little detail here that I enjoy that Bridwell brought back, which is that the base that they're all hanging out in, even though we don't fully see it, is the one from In Between Worlds the villains were using in the first Crisis in the 1960s. Crisis on Earth 1 and then Crisis on Earth 2. It's a fun callback and also a useful one because it makes sense that they would need some kind of base where they could all be placed if they had a neutral meeting point and also where Kull can't see them. Not that that comes up, but it is something that one can infer. Many of the references in this, sometimes even if you can extrapolate that they would be very useful for the plot, they don't fully expand on them inside the story, either because they don't feel the need to or there's not enough space. And so sometimes they can end up coming across as just callbacks or mentions as a result. However, hanging out at this base is a good idea. Also, there's no reason it can't be both. Lore flex and also useful plot point. Now that we have everyone, the adventure can truly begin. And in tried and true form, which they even acknowledge that they're doing, they break off into groups to each take on a challenge on one of the Earths, and also into mini groups inside of those Earths so that they can handle the various villains they're going to come across, not that they know that yet. Basically, they're homaging the classic Gardner-Fox storytelling technique, because that's how those stories would go. The heroes would break off and they would each fight a villain, oftentimes in rapid succession. You would see it over and over again. Only here, there's much more focus on each encounter, and they're much more varied and dynamic. However, the core issue is the same. Each group needs to stop a group of villains that are going to destroy the Earth, not that they know that. We start with something we've talked about before, because it came up in the Queen Clea vid. We start on Earth 2, with Earth 1 Superman noting Atlantis is on the surface, which prompts Earth 2 Wonder Woman to explain that this Atlantis is different than the Atlantis he's familiar with. It's populated by a race of giant warrior women, which we saw when we did that Queen Clea retrospective. She's the despot trying to control all of what remains down there, and the people of the cities Venturia and Orania. Here she's teamed up with Penguin, Blockbuster, and Ibac. So we have people representing all the Earths. They say they're going to help her reconquer Atlantis for a price, for a cut. She's also got some Venus girdles, the belts that force submission that the Amazons use to retrain their prisoners on Transformation Island. So when Penguin and Ibac go off to build something for her, she gets to have a fight with Blockbuster on her side, forced to be so with the girdle, with Wonder Woman and Superman. This is our first fight, and it's pretty fun. She manages to get one of the belts onto Superman, who has to fight becoming her slave. He does pretty well, but ultimately it's Wonder Woman who snaps him out of it. "You'll be all right then, Superman."
"I'm fine."
"I can't believe how stupid Clea was, overlooking the fact that anyone can command obedience of a person wearing a Venus girdle. In order to counteract Clea's command, all I had to do was speak up." The slave belts, always terrifying.
"I can only assume that the Blockbuster's presence here is somehow Kull's doing, but I still don't understand what defeating this Clea character has to do with saving the human race of Earth 2.
"Of course you don't, Superman, and you won't either until you see the full fruit of Clea's labor on my behalf. The device Ibac and the Penguin are now constructing, but by then, it will be too late." It's always nice when the villains are enjoying themselves. Now, in terms of Kull's connection to the villains, it's pretty tenuous. They'll drop a line here or there about how they've been in contact with him, but for something that's going to have so much detailing in other areas, that's going to be left incredibly vague. He met them at some point, promised them something that they wanted, and then they went along with it. Those details are left very loose, and the connections are left to be made by the reader. So this machine that Penguin and Ibac are building is meant to get Clea control over Atlantis. However, it's actually Kull's secret plan to destroy the Earth, but not Green Arrow and Spy Smasher have something to say about it. Also, they name Spy Smasher's plane accurately. It's the gyro sub.
"What? That was my best shot and you didn't even feel it."
"I'm very strong. The great evil man of the past who gave me my superpowers made me super strong. Ivan the Terrible, Borgia, Attila the Hun, and Caligula, whose initials form the name Ibac." That's a very interesting assortment. Also, is the implication there that they had superpowers, or just getting some of their traits combined gives you superpowers? He's a Captain Marvel villain originally. This issue has a decent amount of editor's notes, mostly in this first issue 135, and whenever they pop up, they're appreciated. At least for me, they were. Those kind of things can be fun. However, if you are aware of everything, they may read as tedious. Penguin's umbrella is very colorful today. Also, you'll note in the speech balloon where Green Arrow is talking about the birds in his life, he calls the rivalry between himself and Hawkman friendly. Oh, how times change. Green Arrow gets to handle him, and Spy Smasher gets to get Ibac to say his name, and that turns him back into his true form, which is a street cleaner, who is very grateful to no longer be a rampaging megalomaniac. However, the machine was briefly activated, and it puffed a cloud up into the air, a mysterious cloud. Also, every time we cut back to Kull, it cannot be the clearest image. He's watching them through a gem. This cloud is increasing. It's getting bigger, and as it does so, it's increasing the density of continents and things underneath it and forcing them down beneath the surface. It's gonna drown the world. It's kind of a bit of irony because it was originally supposed to be used to help Queen Clea. So Kull's plan for this Earth is just to sink it, drown it.
"What do you suppose it all means?" "I'm not sure, but I'd guess that somehow, by technology I don't understand, that cloud increased the molecular density of the island, thereby increasing its weight, causing it to sink."
Wait a minute, if I remember my Kullet's physics right, that's impossible.
"Like I said, there's a lot of stuff on this world that I can't fully comprehend, but a slight case of ignorance never stopped me from finding answers before.
I like that he says that he's off to find answers. He's off to go freeze and punch a cloud. It's never stopped me from punching a cloud before. Superman freezes the cloud first with his freeze breath and then punches it into a passing comet. Hurl your problems into space. A tried and true comic solution. Then Atlantis, which was on the surface, just sinks, cuz. It's also amusing that they're very, very loose with the science in this. They're basically like, listen, we know it doesn't make sense. Just watch Superman punch a cloud. And so Kull is thwarted on Earth 2. And now on not Earth 1, but Earth S, with a cover that features the Shade, my beloved. This is pre-retconned as an immortal Shade, who in that version at this point is a villain more for fun. But that retcon is so smooth, you can read this story and have that in your head and in place, and it still makes sense. This is also pre-Identity Crisis Dr. Light, who's also on the cover. So he's not a rapist yet. Yay! This is fun Dr. Light, like Teen Titans Go Dr. Light. Silly Dr. Light. Joker's there too. We'll acknowledge him because he's there. Issue 136 is Crisis on Earth S, with the same creative team, now with sassy phrases in their write-ups. Let's go. This one opens calling it Chapter 3, which builds that nice connectivity between the issues. And here we have the teams of Hawkman and Hawkgirl with Bulletman and Bullet Girl. Couples day out, we're matching. And on this Earth, suddenly people are just transforming into volcanic rock. Kull is especially keen for this plan to work on Earth S. This should be the most important Earth. This is where the Submen were destroyed. I mean, he has this intense speech about how committing a racial slaughter is the only thing left to him. Kull does come across as very menacing, even if we only get to see him from afar. He doesn't get to take place in much direct action. It's not just the civilians that are transforming. Hawkman starts to turn as well. There's pressure in this. In every group, they start to kind of metamorphosize. Even as the civilians are fleeing the erupting volcano and everything, they still find time to question, who are those heroes with the wings? We don't recognize them. Hashtag not our heroes. Those people with the wings, who are they? I've never seen them before. Have you, Harry?
Muriel, come on, William, move!
Where's Captain Marvel? Why isn't he doing something about this? A valid question. An opportunity to check in on Billy at his job at Wiz TV Studio. A nod to the comic the character debuted in. Also, it's amazing how Billy was given a job at Inception that they've managed to so seamlessly update. Also, it's neat to see Dick Dillon try to approximate CC Beck's iconic style. As for why they can't transform, it's because the Wizard and the Rock of Eternity are out of commission, so they can't do anything, and that's the explanation for why they're not involved in the action, and it's a good one, a way to keep them out of it and let the other characters kind of come forward, because otherwise people would be expecting Captain Marvel and the Marvel family. But Billy is here to tell us about all the other weird things that are happening. Icebergs in Alaska are transforming people into icicles. In Colorado, the Garden of the Gods rocks have come to life and are turning people into stone. Also, the sun is blotted out in an entire hemisphere. That seems like something worth leading with. And on the other, there's a new artificial sun that has turned night to day. Don't think about the science too hard, really don't. This story is much less about that and much more about the effects and the happenings and what story beats they can get in there. Another instance of an inanimate object suddenly springing to life has just been reported in this city. Construction workers on a high-rise site at 29th Street and 8th Avenue have apparently turned to iron, while the building's steel frame is now walking away. By that building, we have our dynamic duos. They've been paired together. So Batman and Robin and Mr. Scarlet and Pinky and the Brain. No. For villains in this section, we have the Joker teaming up with the Weeper, which is a lot of fun just for the juxtaposition. The Weeper is one of Bullet Man and Bullet Girl's villains, Mortimer Gloom, and he has a gang called the Bitter Men. We talked about him more in detail when we covered the Brave and the Bold animated episode that had the Joker and Weeper team up, which I shall link below, and it's a fun episode. That's the one where Batman goes off the deep end and almost starts trying to arrest people for pre-crime. Also, despite the over-the-top and zany tone, how friendly he's drawn, the Joker's gas does seem toxic in this, like he's killing people.
Those poor people laughing themselves to death, and there's nothing to laugh about. It's too sad.
Well, you're the only one crying, blubber lips. Look, even the jewels are dancing with joy. I've heard of mood rings, but this is ridiculous. Drawn by the sound of the commotion, the dynamic duo and Mr. Scarlet and Pinky hurry to the scene, but too late. It looks like the Joker all right, but with a new and deadly twist. Maybe Robin, but he's not alone. I thought I caught a glimpse of another criminal escaping, the Weeper. He's an old foe of Bullet Man's, who is capable of the most brutal murders, but sheds crocodile tears for his victims. There's something really horrific about the frozen, grinning, jeweled statues. It's years later, but imagery like that always makes me think about the Poison Ivy episode from Batman TAS. The Eternal Youth episode, just the end where you see the garden of all the people who've been transformed into trees and their expressions of horror. It's a really effective scene. Now, as for the Joker, when he returned from his Silver Age exile, which he wasn't entirely gone, but he was used incredibly sparingly. He's brought back in a big way in the Bronze Age, in Batman 251, the Joker's 5-way revenge. And he's much darker comparatively, though nowhere near as dark as he'll become. And he does kill. Also, Batman's jaw is turning to steel. We specify that this is the Earth 2 Joker too. This story does have the Joker give a direct line about how Kull promised that it would be magnificent. And so we do have a link that Kull has maybe planned this for a while and has manipulated a lot of things. There's not really many answers given again as to why he switched people around the Earths or that kind of thing. Maybe it was under the assumption that the heroes would do that. Again, that's something that's left for the reader to infer. It's also made clear in this one that he did not tell the villains the full plan and that their Earths were going to be destroyed. Most of them would not go for that. Some of them might have, but not all of them. So we got to see our dynamic duos fight with the Joker and the Weeper. And this issue has more space to breathe because it doesn't have to do as much setup as the one before it. And so you do get to see a bit more of the fights. They're a bit more spaced out and they're fun. They have fun moments. Like this one where Robin evades tear gas with protective contact lenses, getting flash forwards to the rubber lips. He's just prepared. He's been trained by the best. Also, this is the adult Robin costume designed by Neil Adams. I like it much more than the first Earth 2 adult Robin costume, which debuted in an earlier Crisis. The team is convinced this has something to do with the Joker's button that he had, so they bring it to Jim Barr, who's Bullet Man. So I guess at some point he left the others and changed back into civilian garb so that they could meet up. They really need to maintain those secret identities from the Earth 2 peeps. They even have these whole panels where they're trying and struggling to not say each other's names and the like. It's amusing, but at the same time does feel a tad like padding and as though they could have just went and met Bullet Man. Now Jim finds that there is nothing special about this button, which the others don't believe. Pinky even demands to know why his hair is turning into diamonds then. I wasn't prepared for the surprise diamond hair reveal. Maybe Jim being in his civilian identity reflects more of the sensibilities of the time. We have had past crises where people just out their identities to members of teams on other Earths. Perhaps it was thought that that wouldn't fly, or we're in an era where the people writing read those earlier stories and decided that either it was odd or that they would take a different tact. Or maybe it's just flexing the lore in different locations and adding in more details on Earth S. So no one knows exactly why or how these things are happening, and now it's time for even more villains, because remember, the Earth is blotted out on one side and really artificially bright on the other. And so we get our reveal as to who's causing what. On the dark side of the Earth, we have the Shade. The dark side, small wonder. I'd recognize that creep anywhere. The Shade. I recognize the other one. I've seen photographs of him in the Justice League casebook. His name is Dr. Light. Both those pictures look way more like headshots than mugshots. They both look like they just need a little signature at the bottom. These two baddies have been spotted in Europe and the Western US. Those headshots, coupled with the alternate contemporary meaning of baddies, is amusing me greatly. Hawkman's big idea is that they should switch partners. That'll confuse him. Although it does nothing, because he's part of the group taking on the Shade, and the Shade travels between Earth 1 and 2 a decent amount just to mess with the Flashes. He even just exclaims, by Erebus, it's the Hawkman of Earth 1. He's at the Louvre for reasons, stealing paintings, and here all the paintings have come to life, but the people have turned into paintings. Lovely, lovely. Not only will I make off with dozens of masterpieces, but my accomplices will be the paintings themselves. What is happening? You never know what's going to happen next in this crisis. The panel of Hawkman using his wings to blow the painting people away is great. Also, the Shade has a shadow jet propulsion cane in this. So pre-retcon, the Shade was a tech villain who used mostly his cane to control the shadows. Post-Zero Hour, he was infused with shadow power himself, and this era is explained as him not having full mastery over his abilities, / aura farming, because he'll still have the cane / walking stick, but it's just kind of there for the aesthetic. Also, jet propelled cane is not the oddest accessory they've ever given him. That's probably the Shade Mobile. They call him the Duke of Darkness in this. Let's bring that back, along with the blonde blockbuster for Supergirl. He is caught by Hawkman, who tells him to reverse the darkness, but he finds that he can't. Now over in Yellowstone, we have Hawkgirl and Bullet Girl against Dr. Light and living water geysers that are reaching for them. And Dr. Light won't stop making light puns, but they don't get to defeat him because he suddenly gets petrified. And his light duplicates, which are sentient, tell the heroes about a satellite. Maybe the new sun is the satellite, and it isn't just switching night and day around, but causing the transformations too. Maybe. Let's get my weapon and find out. Careful. Don't snap his petrified fingers. Oh, they're taking care to be mindful of his fingers. They wouldn't be if they knew what the future held. So the heroes and the Shade can't figure out why they can't turn off the satellites, because it turns out the Dark was satellite-based too. And they solve this very similarly to how Superman solved the expanding cloud problem. They used the Shade's cane and Dr. Light's gun to push the satellites into each other and just explode them, smush them, just break the tech. As for how the satellites were causing the transformations, hey, look, Johnny Thunder's come to visit the Marvel family. Next issue is Crisis in Tomorrow. We're at 137. With a bait cover of Superman about to fight Captain Marvel, who they call the Big Red Cheese on the cover, which was his nickname and avoids the fact that they can't call him by his actual name. Same creative team, and now we're on Earth 1. The write-up for Crisis in Tomorrow does pretty succinctly describe what's going on, all things considered. Here we have both Flashes, both Green Lanterns, and Ibis against Mr. Atom, who is a giant radioactive robot intent on ruling the world. He's also a member of the Monster Society of Evil. Kull is taking losing 2 Earths of his plan relatively in stride, especially because one of them was the one he cared about the most. What better place for another dimensional villain to begin his attack upon Earth 1? Human worms, you have defeated me on 2 Earths, but on this one, I shall not fail. When King Kull's work is done, there will be no tomorrow on Earth 1, neither figuratively nor literally. He means literally a couple of levels, because not only will there not be another day, but the city being attacked is called tomorrow. It's in a dome, and it's meant to showcase what the future could be. As the heroes rush in, there's a bunch of exposition to explain why Kull would let the wizard see his plans in the Rock of Eternity. They really don't want you to write in about it. Since Shazam was paralyzed, Kull thought there was nothing he could do about it, right? Right, Kull didn't know Shazam could communicate telepathically with Mercury. Gentlemen, you sound like bad actors struggling with purely expositional dialogue. Poking fun at it doesn't negate the fact that you're doing it. I see you. The 2 Lanterns and Ibis try to take down Mr. Atom, but they're repelled by some kind of black aura. Hal has a good idea to duplicate the aura and try again, but as they do, they sense a trail leading up into the stratosphere. So they follow that and leave the Flashes and Mercury down there to deal with Mr. Atom. They're trying to save civilians, and they get a really cool action panel, which also stops to explain who they are, which is interesting because not everyone got those. And of all the characters that people probably know about in this kind of story, they would likely be up there, because they're the catalyst for a lot of this. At least this specific formatting of Earth 1, Earth 2, Golden Age Earth, that kind of thing. We've talked before about how there was also a Wonder Woman story that predates it, but it's slightly different. Meanwhile, gravity's not working right with the crew chasing the black aura up into the stratosphere, and people are flying upwards. Kull's bizarre physics and shenanigans at it again. Also, there's just a spaceship up there, and it's manned by Brainiac. We just have everybody showing up for this. And he proceeds to turn Hal into a skeleton. Sometimes it feels like you're playing Mad Libs in these issues. Odd sensation. Something strange happening to me. Something strange indeed, Emerald Gladiator, for your mysterious black aura and the protective Clean energy shell surrounding the ship have combined somehow to produce an incredible transformation. Excellent. Analysis. The barium effect has taken place. Conclusion. Defeat of this Earth's Green Lantern, proceeding according to calculations. So he has to stop Brainiac as a skeleton. Thankfully, Ibis shows up and uses his it can do pretty much anything stick to then turn Brainiac's gun into tentacles, and it looks pretty sus. And then he just fixes Hal. And that all happened in a couple of panels. Panels padded in a very cool way, Captain. So Brainiac is the one generating the black aura around Mr. Atom, who is attacking the city to make the Flashes run so that their energy is powering a machine that is speeding up the Earth's rotation, which is what's causing the gravity to go haywire and the people just be flying off the Earth. Also, I just really like this panel of Alan's reaction of Hal asking him for help. Come on, Alan, I need your help. Huh? Oh yeah. Sure. It's like, what? How? Okay. Mr. Atom is taken out because he tries to take the magical Ibis stick and use it against its own master. And that doesn't work. It has a kind of repel effect on it. He's just jettisoned off into space. Problem solved. Because this is issue 137, meaning we also need to wrap everything up with Kull. So now we get to jump to the Rock of Eternity. And Kull is pivoting. He's taking this well too. Yes, his plan entirely failed. But now he can take out all the heroes here at the Rock and then just destroy every single Earth, which I contend should have been the plan from the beginning. Just one button. Boop. I know that's no fun, but it's efficient. I guess I don't have the right flair to be a supervillain. I'll fail Megamind school. Kull was prepared for Superman because he has red kryptonite. And this moment is kind of a big deal because kryptonite was not really a thing at this point. Kryptonite, and Red K in particular, is no longer at its height like it was in the Silver Age, where its function was whatever the writer needed it to do, and it didn't have the same effect twice. Red K, that is. Now, in 1971, kryptonite would be removed from the equation. For a time. It was a storyline in which kryptonite was rendered inert. There was this idea that kryptonite was overused, that the stories that it featured in were often silly, and that Superman needed to have more grounded stories. He was also depowered a bit around this time, and the focus of his stories shifts. There's a really big attempt to temper the Man of Steel. However, this also leads to the great panel where Superman eats some inert kryptonite. So by 1976, seeing Red K would have been noteworthy. Whereas now, time of recording, it's something that you do see pop up again. Kryptonite's once more pretty big on the scene. The effect that it has on Superman in this story is also worth noting. It fills him with a blind rage, a bloodlust, that since we're in the Bronze Age is treated as quite menacing. Red K had caused dark sides to manifest before, or anger, but not quite the way they show it here. The mindless rage is now one of the standard effects of Red K. It is no longer the whimsical kryptonite that it had been and hasn't been for a while, although bad boy Red K Clark from Smallville comes pretty close. And now, for the first time in years, the Man of Tomorrow faces an unpredictable unpredictable kryptonite isotope known as red kryptonite. Under its influence, his features darken, his brows knit, lips curl back thinly across steel-hard teeth in a hate-filled grimace as a mad lust seizes him, a burning desire to kill. Freeze this image, trap it in your mind like a fly in amber, for we must leave it now, if only for a moment. When next we return here, just a second will have elapsed, but it will be a second on which a universe may turn or tumble. The suspense. We need to go to Johnny Thunder, who's with the Marvels, and he was tapped for this story because he has the Thunderbolt, which is pretty much, just to break it down, a genie that's attached to him, and so they're able to use that genie's magic to let the Marvel family transform. They get into the action right at the end, and they head to the Rock of Eternity and punch Kull in the face, and that's the end of Kull. One punch. It's a tad anticlimactic. He planned so hard, it was so convoluted, and just one punch. The Marvel family frees the Elders, but there's still a crazed Superman to deal with, who Alan is holding off with Green K. So is Hal, but it's not working. But the way Hal's dialogue box looks, it's like he's just egging Alan on to cut him some slack. He was a skeleton just a few moments ago. Captain Marvel has a plan, since he knows that Superman is vulnerable to magic, which means they don't actually fight, but he baits him to make it look like they're going to. But he's just getting him close enough so he can say, Shazam! And then the magic lightning hits Superman, and that knocks the red K right out of him.
Great Krypton, I don't know how I got here or where that kid came from, but one thing's for sure, I've got to save him.
And so Kull is captured, the Submen are not avenged, and everyone goes home. Wow, as 22 brightly garbed figures hurtle back through the dimensional doorway to their respective worlds. 22, there were a lot of people here. You get to see everybody in the panel of them leaving, and it made me realize that I'd forgotten that some people were in the story. I wonder what Green Arrow and Spy Smasher talked about while all the other things were happening. It probably wasn't as much time elapsing inside the story itself as hopping in between them, but they probably still had some time to kill. This crisis was a fever dream. It's a lot of a lot, so let's break it down. Conceptually, it's a fun and simple idea. One villain trying to take down 3 Earths from a distant vantage point, and he's got agents on each Earth to do so. And the heroes have to figure out what's going on and stop him. It's in the execution that things get really fascinating. On the one hand, the story is controlled, sticking to the tried and true Gardner-Fox format, while also moving it forward a little bit. It gives pertinent character information as seamlessly as it can whenever possible. On the other hand, in terms of what the events are, they seem almost random at points. It's happening. It's hurtling at you. Even inside those events, some of them feel very tenuously tied together. The middle points of what's going on seem to take precedence over the resolutions of the situation. It reads like much more fun was had there than with the resolution points. Now, it's always fun to see them pull for so many characters, at least for me. Again, for people who don't like that many characters in the story, this is going to be a nightmare. I imagine, though, for people who enjoy it, it was extra fun for people who remember who these characters were or know them. However, even for a series known for having lots of characters, this was a lot of characters. There were so many that it got to the point where one can forget about some of them. And as a result, the Earth-esque characters, and just some of the characters in general, don't really end up being all that showcased. As always with these, there are a few that rise more to the surface, but on the whole, there's just too many characters to really let any of them fully shine. Where this story absolutely shines, however, is the creativity. It's really fun. It has a Silver Age energy to its happenings. Paintings coming to life, continents being forced down by science, giant automatons trying to raise idyllic cities. It just goes for it. In that regard, the most out there issue, probably the one that has the most room to breathe, is 136, because it's in the middle, so it doesn't have to contend with the introductions or the conclusion like the issues that precede and follow it do. However, with that said, again, there's a lot happening. Some of the ones don't feel fully formed, and some feel a bit rushed, or they just peter out, and so it can just at times come across as a sequence of events just happening. Vignettes, intense vignettes, like Hal being turned into a skeleton for a couple of panels. It's cool and fun, but it doesn't have that much weight. But perhaps it's not meant to. Perhaps it's just meant to be, look what we can do. Look at all the things that could happen in this issue. Look at all the happenings. You could argue the same with the Red K moment. A great moment, but really easily dealt with. Despite all the details, very little time is given to Kull, and it's his plan. He can come across as almost an afterthought. However, there are many cool nods and callbacks, and not all of them are editors noted either. But for those who are in the know, they may recognize and appreciate them. It really also sells the Gardner-Fox formula as something that can be exciting, whereas in some past issues, it could be tedious. So this one's a bit of a mixed bag, but it's oh so dense and oh so worth reading. I was supremely entertained, and is that not the goal? Are you not entertained? Some would argue that no, they are not entertained. It's too much, there's too much going on, or some of the things that they didn't connect may really bother them. As always, different strokes for different folks, and I also, as always, encourage you to read these for yourselves. These ones have been reprinted a decent amount, so they're fairly easy to track down. Also, there was so much in this that I didn't get a chance to highlight everything, as is always the case, which is why it's worth it to check it out for oneself, because you never know which details you're really going to notice or things that are going to stand out to you.
This one certainly felt like a crisis.
It is certainly memorable and never boring. But all of those are just my thoughts. Not only do I want to hear from you, but I love reading some of the letters from the time as to what people thought about this one. And sometimes these can run a little long, but it's worth it because you really get into the headspace. However, if there are too many and there are extras that I really want to read, I will do it in shorts, as I have been doing. The shorts have been a great place to read some letters. But as for now, let's go to the letters column. Dear Editor, one thing that has always bothered me about these JLA-JSA team-ups is what happens after the battle is won. The heroes always end up flying away quietly with the knowledge that they've saved the universe. Again, nobody ever says, wow, was my opponent tough? How about yours? Or gee, we ought to do this every year. Actually, they have said that. Nor do they trade secrets in how they defeated their foes. Just once, I'd like to see someone say, you know, the Joker's a sucker for a right cross. Reply, actually, the Joker's a sucker for a left hook, but we get the message. And now that we've got twice the space every issue, we'll try to give you some of what you ask for. And that's a promise. From Bob Rozakis. Dear Editor, Justice League 137 provided the crowning touch to this year's JLA-JSA team-up, which has encompassed as many worlds, featured 21 superheroes, and has taken us from the streets of Star City to the Rock of Eternity at the center of all time and space. Concentrating on the concluding chapter, Crisis in Tomorrow, which was the best of the lot, I find that most of the action centered around the Flashes, the Green Lanterns, Ibis, and Mercury, who struggled against Brainiac and Mr. Atom to save the world from the demonic designs of King Kull. As someone who still shudders when he remembers the last appearance of the green-skinned computer, I was happy to see that Brainiac is back to normal and a worthy adversary for the JLA and company. And of course, the story's ultimate resolution, including the Red Kryptonite surprise, was also quite good. Though I'm sure you'll get a lot of letters taking you to task for copping out on the Superman/Captain Marvel clash. I think you did the right thing. Why end all the speculation about who is stronger? People will back their personal favorite anyway. So let me congratulate all concerned with the past 3 issues of JLA, from E. Nelson Bridwell and Marty Pascoe to Dick Dillon and Frank McLaughlin to Julie Schwartz and Bob Rozakis. What more can I say? Okay, so there's a letter here from someone called Elizabeth who wrote in more than once across these issues, but this one's cut off, but I want to read the ending to it. Which is, the villains, for the most part, were familiar and pleasant, except for Kull. They were just that, pleasant. Kull was a little scary, but he was just about the only one. The Joker was cute, and Shade and Dr. Light were like children, frolicking in the sand. Ho-hum. I hope the last struggle with King Kull is going to be a bit more exciting than this. The gigantic struggle you're trying to portray has thus far fallen on its face, and in this case, it smashed its nose. The response to this is pretty amusing. Considering the homicidal tendencies oft-times displayed by the likes of the Joker and Dr. Light, how can you possibly consider them pleasant? Listen, I'm considering Dr. Light pleasant comparatively. The letters were a bit more sparing this time around. As always, lots of thoughts, just as I had lots of thoughts, so please share yours down below. What do you think of these crises issues? Did you enjoy them? Do you think it was a fun ride? Was it too much? Which part was your favorite? Did you like seeing the Fawcett characters? Were you a fan of them? Was this just not for you? I can't wait to see what you have to say down below. And while you're down there, please do the YouTube things. Like, comment, subscribe, share, hit the bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Thanks so much for taking some time out of your day to spend discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it. I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.